3 months ago, one of my family members was at a bookstore trying to find out what to give me for Christmas. And they spent a couple hours there, according to them, and I believe them, looking for the perfect book. After a few hours, I think God's wisdom and sovereignty was put into them, and they found Reactivity by Paul Tripp. The bookmark for this, by the way, is currently a letter from Google with a PIN code so that I can turn on payouts for the monetization. There are a few thousands of dollars sitting in my YouTube account that I just have been forgetting to accept, long story short. So the premise of this book is how the gospel transforms our actions and reactions, specifically in the use case of online communication and social media. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. And I want you, as we get into this video, to keep that context of this book in the back of your mind, to think about it as I tell you a story about a moment I've had recently or a day I had recently where I think the application of this book stands out to me. Let's get into it. Let's roll intro. "13 months ago, I started a consulting firm by accident. Had just parted ways with this guy named Iman Gadji, and piggybacking off of running this company as the COO and then CEO, I grew a network of leaders in the online space who knew that I had some kind of decent acumen in business. And one of the first guys to ever hit me up and ask for time, paid time, was a guy named Trey Cockrum, who has since become a good friend. Trey Cockrum's an awesome guy. If you ever watch this, Trey, feel free to send me a text. Love you much. And I put out an Instagram story about a week later just saying if I opened up some kind of one-on-one consulting, who would be interested? And it got really good response. I think we brought in 10 or 12 clients very selectively, all of them doing anywhere from like $250,000 a month all the way to $2 million a month, and kept all of them for many months. I think our average retention in our first year was over 7 months of clients staying on with us for the one-on-one. I think our average client size last year was $400,000 a month, which is cool. I don't think there are a lot of people in the space that can say that they're working with companies on average doing $5 million a year. So I'm proud of that. But toward the end of the year, I wanted to start opening up the doors more. And we started working with companies that were slightly smaller. And to this day now, I don't think we're ever going to go lower than this, but we now work with companies that are doing around $250,000 a year at the minimum floor. $250,000 a year. If you're larger than that, of course, that's our bread and butter. But at $250,000, we think you have not validation in offer, but enough work ethic to prove that if you work with us, we're going to help you grow. $250,000 is like the work ethic benchmark. If you're doing $20,000 a month, then you, for the most part, are working hard enough through brute force to succeed. Very rarely do people do $250,000 in any kind of smart way. It's almost always through just sheer effort. So because of that, we started working with more people. And I started something called Daley7. If you want to find out more about Daley7, feel free to go to Daley7.com. I'm not going to CTA right now. Kind of did. But my point to all of this is 13 months in, and we finally got our first refund request. First refund, I should say. We did refund the request. And it hit me. It hit me hard, almost in a personal manner because of how this one went down. So I thought realistically, without shedding any kind of names, I wanted to tell you about the situation. Number one, because I learned a lot. And as I learned a lot, I'm sure you guys will learn. And number two is because I think there are things from those learning lessons that I'm going to take as actionables that I would love to share with you. And then there's something that I will CTA at the end for D7 that I think is cool that I'm taking out of this entire situation. So a little bit of a different video on how, I haven't created the title for this yet, but how Christians should react to turbulence in business. That's too long for a title, but something along the lines of that will be the premise of this video. Diving in, this offer, Daley7, is newer. Working with companies that are smaller is newer for us. And anytime I launch something new, I personally take all of the sales calls. I think realistically for me to give that to a sales rep and to create the processes, I have to do it first. If you don't do that, by the way, I think there's a learning lesson to be had in that on its own. I had a call with a gentleman who was a really good dude, God-fearing guy, and he wanted to come on. I don't even think I pitched him. I think that he came as someone who already wanted to work with me, had been in mentorship programs and coaching programs in the past, and saw that I must have one and was saying, I want to join. And when we got into it to see if he was a good fit, his business mechanics were solid. He was smaller, again, hovering around that $250,000 month mark, but he specifically was tied down with a bit of debt, which if you don't know, in the coaching industry is really, really common. A lot of people in the coaching industry will start making money, spend heavily because kind of like the lottery effect. If you don't know how to manage money when you start making a lot of money, most of the time you will overspend, lose the money and more, go into debt. And that's what happened with this gentleman. And he was about $30,000 in debt. Right out of the gate, I've thought about this. I still don't know if it was the right move to even bring him on. I still don't know if I want sales reps when they start taking the calls. I don't know if I want them taking prospects who say that they're in debt like that. And the reason for it is I don't like people taking on debt. Number one, in general, but number two, especially for education. I think at the end of the day, you should work for money to pay toward education so you can make your work more leveraged. But I don't think it's a smart move to take out debt for education. That's why I don't like school. I really don't like seeing so many people use Affirm and Klarna and all these different financing options in order to buy education. Very rarely do I think it's a smart move. Most of the time, almost 99% of the time, I think realistically you should have the cash and much more in your account. Then you leverage that cash to invest into something that can make your work more leveraged in its own. That's way too much use of the word leverage. My point though is I don't like people taking out debt, especially if they're in debt already. And so on one side, this guy was stretched financially, and I knew that. But the other side is I really do think, based on his business and what he was doing, I genuinely believe to my core that he is someone that we could have helped in business. I've helped that model of person, that model of business hundreds of times. And he had a really good, again, to use the word leverage, he had a lot of leverage. He had a lot of followers on social media. And I don't think realistically he was just putting a good offer that had alignment with his following in front of them. And I think it would have been very easy to get him out of the debt that he was in. So in that little dilemma on the call, and I still don't know if I would do it over again, I decided that I think it would work. And we brought him on, and he was willing, he wanted to what's called PIF, pay in full, pay in advance, PIA, whatever you want to refer to it as. You know that PIFs are the goal. Everyone's trying to get PIFs, cash collected. Cash now is better than cash later. That's the rule of business. And I want you to think about how much of an anomaly what I'm about to tell you is. I'm on the call, he's giving me card information to take the full payment, and I just have this pull on my heart. I really do think it was the spirit convicting me. I don't even know toward what, but I could feel at least this. I had this pull in my heart to not take full payment from him. And I split it in half. And I think that was me really, number one, going above and beyond. But number two, just trying to follow whatever was absolutely right in this situation. And I'm sure there will be people in the comments who say that I failed at it, but I tried. I promise I tried. Anyway, so moving forward, we are working with this guy for about 42 days or so, and he is on all of our group sessions. He's taking the one-on-ones with my team and I. He's doing really well. He's interacting. He's happy. He's laughing. He's obviously telling us on the one-on-ones that he's stressed, but he's making moves toward the goal. And then on day 42 or 43, his payment is coming up in a couple of days. He shoots us a message saying that he doesn't think the group is the right thing for him, very abruptly. He was on calls with us day before, if you will, and then says, I don't think this is the right thing for me, and asks to be removed, which to me, I still believe it was financially motivated. I don't think that he was in a comfortable state to make that second payment. So the very first thing I offered and did was say, and I'm sorry to any clients that hear this, I said, bro, I want to help you. So let's continue working together and just pause any other collections, because the way we work is there's a recurring payment and there's the upfront, et cetera. So I said, let's pause everything and get to a state where we're really comfortable, and then we can talk about it. But for now, let me just keep you in here for free, which I know is bad, but I really wanted to help this guy. Well, let me first, I know it's bad from there are clients paying for the exact same service, but I genuinely felt a pull to want to help this guy. And I offered that. I didn't hear anything back from him. So my team reaches out the week after, and the response to one of my team members, I had been ghosted, but the response to a team member of mine is, the text was, I appreciate you reaching out. After going through the program, I've realized it's not the right fit for me. Keep in mind, he was on every single call, every one-on-one, loving it, happy, engaged, was going to actually come to our event that we're having in about a week in person. Since I didn't sign any kind of agreement, I'd like to request a refund. Let me know how we can proceed with that. Thanks, man. God bless. Side note, I don't personally love having people sign contracts, because realistically, I don't think you should ever get into business with people you don't trust. If the client ever asks, we do. And I know that's a stupid business move. Trust me. But at the same time, I don't think realistically that you should ever have to operate on anything other than your word. That's probably not proverbial. I know that in Proverbs, it talks about keeping your word and not making agreement verbally or in contract that you can't uphold. But for the most part, I'm not a contract guy. If you tell me something, I'm going to do it. If I tell you something, I'm going to do it. I think our say-do ratio should be high. That said, my COO has taken this and said, okay, we're going to do agreements for everybody, and I'm not going to disagree with him. The reason that I'm reading this text to you is because I think there are a few things before I even get into my reaction that I would like to say. Number one is that I believe that relationships should be ended with how they were continued and started. Meaning, let's use dating for an example. If you texted a girl, will you go out with me? Will you be my girlfriend? And then that relationship stayed in text for the majority of the relationship. You never really saw each other in person. You never called each other. Then I think it's fair at that point to actually break up through text, which would normally be a big no-no. If you call the girl and ask her to date you, and then most of the time you're dating or you're on the phone, which would, again, both of these scenarios would be strange. I think it's then appropriate to call to break up. I don't think you could text and break up, because at that point you're regressing from the standard that the relationship's been in. So the same thing if you're in person and ask the girl to date you, and then all of your dates and relationship for the most part is in person, I think it's wrong at that point to call or text to break up, because you're regressing from the standard of the relationship. And the only reason people regress is because of shame, embarrassment, and not being willing to conquer those emotions. I think as Christian men, we are called to be people who do not surrender to those emotions. I think we are supposed to be people who are okay with being uncomfortable. I think we're supposed to be people who are not willing to succumb to fear and shame. And I don't think that this was the right thing to do here. This is still my thought on this before I get into how I reacted and such. I don't think realistically that if we have a Zoom call and then multiple one-on-one sessions, and then on top of that, all these group sessions that are on Zoom, I don't think it's right at that point to break up via text. I think the mature thing to do at that point would be to ask for a call to talk about billing and to talk about their membership. And I would actually think that's honorable. I think there is something to be said about if you can't continue with what your agreement, your word was, at least having the ability to overcome the fear and shame that comes with knowing that you have to break out of an agreement because you can't uphold it. I think doing that the right way has honor in its own. I think it's the honorable thing to do. But I don't think that this was the honorable thing to do, because it was backing out or regressing from the standard of the relationship because of shame. I understand at the end of the day that this was a message from a man, a godly man, a good guy, who was feeling embarrassed and shameful at not being able to continue with his agreement and didn't have the courage to overcome that feeling to tell us like a man in person, or in this case on Zoom. Anyway, so that's the moment, right? Now getting into reactivity and how I reacted. I think that context to this is there's a guy, I told you I used to work with him, his name was Iman. And when Iman was faced with anything that could strike emotion, there's something he did that I always used to learn from, which is take time to respond. And I think there's even more context to know here. In business, one of the takeaways for everyone to take, including myself from this, is in business, there are very few times where a response has to be given in a timely manner, or let me rephrase, in a rushed manner. Very seldom are there instances in business where something is sent your way or put in front of you that could be emotionally activating, where you have to respond right away. There are, don't get me wrong, there are instances, unique instances, that do call for a reaction immediately, but 99% of the things that are put in front of us as business owners, if there's any type of time constraint in the situation, it's almost always added by us. Meaning, realistically, it's okay to take time to let the emotion dwindle, let the logic show, and be wise in how we react. And I remember the very first thing I did when I got that text, it was a text screenshot on Slack, it was nothing. I saw it, I read it, and I put my phone down, and I decided to do nothing. I reacted with patience, and I let my emotions fade. I prayed on it, and I actually slept on it. I waited till the morning after to tell my team I read this, thinking about how to best react and respond. And even in the morning, I still didn't come with an instant response. I wanted to make sure that I came with a fair, gospel-motivated response. And I came to the conclusion that a refund was not fair, but we would do it anyway. And we would do it because I thought it was the Christian thing to do. I thought it was the gospel-centric thing to do. Specifically, there's a song going through my head right now. It's called God is Love. I've been listening to it like crazy. And there's a line in it which says, "'Cause he is good and he is God. What I earned is not what I got. And he is just, yet also kind. What I deserve is not what I find." Specifically, the use case here is what I deserve is not what I find. I don't think that this gentleman, this client, deserved a refund because he changed a lot about his business and he was engaged completely in the community. I think he needed the refund because he was financially strapped. And I don't think he deserved it. I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was right. But we also don't deserve what we get. We don't deserve Jesus. We don't deserve the gifts of God that he gives us and the grace and mercy that he pours out on us. We deserve endless wrath, but that's not what we get. And so if the goal of being a Christian is to be a mini Christ, then realistically that means that I have to do what Christ would do. I have to act like Christ. And if Christ gives us what we don't deserve, meaning mercy and grace and his self, then I think we have to do the same. Even if that means when someone is asking for a refund and they don't deserve it, it's not fair. Giving it anyway and showing mercy and showing grace, because that is what Jesus did for us. And I think there's something to be said there about, especially in the online space, where like the word refund, I hear it referred to as the R word. I think there has to be something, if you're a Christian business owner, I think there has to be things that set you apart from everyone else in the space. We're, as Christians, we're called to be different than the rest of the world. And obviously I want that difference to be in how we create content and how we glorify God. I want that difference to be how our product works, and the fact that, D7, a large part of what we do is make God the CEO of your company. But I also think that has to be in the hard things to do, the harder things to do, like saying, I'll give you money that is rightfully mine back to you, even when you don't deserve it, because God gives us what we don't deserve. I think that, if anything, the tricky line here is that I also, as Christians, we're not supposed to be walked on. And so I'm sure there's probably going to be a case that I can make another video down the road on about when I didn't issue a refund because it would have been abuse of grace. A lot to take here. Obviously, you can see that I still haven't come to a formal point, but I still want to audit how I reacted to the moment in this situation, because I sent a text out, and I think the only thing that I didn't do is wait long enough for the tone of disappointment, if you will, to leave my message. Because I sent a text, I sent another message saying I saw this was the case. I'm happy to do what's right, happy to refund. I think my very first text message was, I want to do what's right here. Can we hop on a call? And I understand that in our industry, hopping on a call is normally going to be trying to save the refund, etc. It wasn't that at all. What I really wanted to do is talk to him about kind of what I've talked about in this video. You should end relationships the same way you start them. Final resolution to this is we never hopped on a call. I don't think he found the courage to overcome those fears. And even after refunding him, sending a refund receipt and letting him know we refunded him, still asking for a call, he still wouldn't hop on the call. Hey bro, I think an audio message is probably best here so that tonality is not misconveyed. I would love to talk to you, bro. Again, there's no self-interest. Money's already on the way. But the self-interest, if you will, is that I feel this conviction in my heart to correct where I see a brother in wrong. And so I love you much. I'm still down. If you need anything, let me know. And I think the part that frustrated me about that was that as Christians, and he was a Christian as well, we are supposed to live differently, and we're supposed to, and we could get into Proverbs and all the Proverbs that I think he didn't uphold on as a Christian, but I think the main thing to note is that we're all flawed, and so I'm not going to say he did something wrong, because I know I definitely did too at some point that I'm probably just blind to. It's like saying, hey, you have a splinter in your eye when I have a log in mine. I'm not going to quote where he was wrong, but what I will say on my end to fall on my sword is that I can read back those texts and just see that even though I said the right thing and I did the right thing and I wanted the right thing for him and I quoted scripture that I believe was applicable in the situation, when I read the text, I don't read it with love. I know that Jesus would have come to that situation and been stern and steadfast, but he would have shown love and grace in the tone and the words that he chose to use. And I don't think, looking back at my text messages, that I did anything that was wrong, but I don't think I showed love, which is one of the 2 great commandments of the gospel. And I think that is because I reacted, even after waiting a day, a little too quickly. When it didn't need that. And so the action that I would like to, there's again a couple things I want to take from this and make sure you guys and myself act on. Number 1 is remembering always that if there's any kind of emotion provoked in a situation, I likely don't have to respond right away, or even that day or the day after. I can take time for the emotion to fade and come with a loving tone and a loving approach after, which is something I think I've gotten way better at. I failed out of here, but if I look at myself years ago versus now, I think I've become much better at showing love in situations, and it's because I'm taking more time to respond. Number 2 is often, like this book says, a response is, in this case it was needed, but another actionable is just a response is very often not needed at all. There are a lot of things that will frustrate you in business, and sometimes the response just might be to not do anything. I might think about this in a year and say, best thing to do would have been just to send a message and say, love you, bro, wish you the best, send a refund, and maybe no response was needed. Maybe no call was needed. I don't have the maturity to see that now, if that is the case. The last thing I want to hit, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a soft sales pitch, is it's really been in my brain that this was the first refund request in 13 months that we've had, the first refund. And I just think about how every offer that I've ever ran, I've always told people they need risk diverters, meaning you have to take the risk off prospects when buying so that they feel safer in investing their money with you. And I haven't had that in the last 13 months because I just didn't think I needed it. Everyone was coming to me, except for the fact that I told you the website daley7.com earlier in this video, you would have never known where to find my coaching offer. And because of that, realistically, I've just never needed risk diversion because everyone's been coming and everyone's already been ready to go. But I want to play with something, just a little test. While this video is going to stay on YouTube, so I don't know if this is always going to be the case. If you're watching this, then check out Daley7 and see if this is still the case. But I want to test something for at least the small foreseeable future, which is a money back guarantee, specifically a no questions asked money back guarantee. What really came to mind from this is maybe if I had just given him a 7-day window and he decided after 7 days that he didn't want a refund because he was happy with everything, maybe we would have avoided this, or maybe we would have just gotten into this sooner and poured less time into it. So I want to play with something. I want to play with a 7-day money back guarantee, no questions asked. So if you've ever, I'm going to again give you a soft sales pitch. If you've ever thought about having me help you inside a business or my team, you think that there is some kind of judgment that I have that would be good discernment for you, then go to Daley7.com. I'll actually probably put a link to it below and book a call with us. And if you decide that it's the right thing for you and you want to come on, I will give you 7 days of full money back guarantee, meaning 1 week of seeing if this thing is for you, having calls with us, having one-on-one calls with us, getting inside the community, etc. If you don't think in the first 7 days that this is the right thing for you, then I think what I have to come to terms with is I'm creating something that will be good for a lot of people, but not for everyone. And I'm not creating it to be good for everyone. And I want to make sure that as we start to open up the doors more to the public, that's known. And I think the way to show that I'm not trying to create something for everyone is by saying, try it for 7 days. If you don't like it, then you get your money back. So if that sounds interesting, I'm going to end the video here. Feel free down below, Daley7.com. There's probably a link. If there's not, Daley7.com. It's my last name with 7.com. I love you guys much. I hope there was some kind of counsel to be taken in this. I know for me, there was a lot of learning from this one story. Until next time, happy hunting.